American and Iranian negotiators just finished their second round of nuclear talks in Geneva, Switzerland, and what happened inside that meeting room today is going to determine whether the Middle East gets a fragile peace or explodes into the most devastating regional war in decades. It is February 17, 2026, and the world just held its breath for 6 hours while Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi sat across a table in a heavily guarded Geneva hotel and exchanged draft text for a potential nuclear agreement. Oman's Foreign Minister Sayyid Badr Albusaidi confirmed after the talks concluded that both sides made good progress and reached an understanding on guiding principles. Araghchi himself said a window of opportunity exists, and that both sides agreed to work on draft texts and schedule a third round of negotiations. That sounds promising. That sounds like diplomacy working. But here is what nobody in that room is saying publicly. The draft text that was exchanged today contains absolutely nothing about Iran's ballistic missiles, nothing about the 1-200 to 1-500 missiles Iran has rebuilt to pre-war levels since last June, nothing about the Shahab 3s and Sejils and Khorramshahr missiles that can reach Tel Aviv in 7 minutes, nothing about the missile factories in Parchin and Shahroud that U.S. intelligence confirmed are operating at full capacity. Iran's Foreign Minister Araghchi made Iran's position crystal clear at the UN disarmament conference in Geneva just hours after the talks ended. He demanded that the United States immediately stop threatening the use of force against Iran. He talked about guiding principles and draft texts and third rounds of negotiations, but he said nothing about missiles because from Iran's perspective, missiles were never on the table and never will be. And that single fact that the deal being drafted today covers nuclear issues only while completely ignoring Iran's missile arsenal, is pushing Israel toward a unilateral military strike that could happen within days. Let me take you inside what actually happened in Geneva today, because understanding the details of these negotiations is crucial to grasping why we are closer to war than most people realize. The second round of U.S.-Iran talks was held at a secure location in Geneva, Switzerland, selected because of Switzerland's long history of neutrality and its experience hosting sensitive diplomatic negotiations. Steve Witkoff, Trump's special envoy, who conducted the first round in Oman on February 6th, led the American delegation. Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor who has been deeply involved in Middle East negotiations since Trump's first term, joined Witkoff for this round, signaling that the White House considers these talks a top priority. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi led the Tehran delegation, which included senior officials from Iran's Atomic Energy Organization and representatives from the Supreme National Security Council. The presence of nuclear technical experts on Iran's side indicates that the talks went deep into the specifics of uranium enrichment levels, centrifuge numbers, and inspection protocols, rather than staying at the level of general principles. According to Oman's foreign minister, who served as a mediator, the talks lasted approximately 6 hours, significantly longer than the first round in Oman. Both sides presented written proposals for the first time, moving beyond verbal exchanges into actual draft treaty language. That's a significant step. When negotiators start exchanging written texts, it means they're serious about reaching an agreement. It means both sides see the outline of a deal they can potentially live with. The American proposal, according to sources familiar with the talks who spoke to Axios and Reuters, includes 3 core demands. First, Iran must suspend uranium enrichment to 60% purity, which is the level Iran has been enriching to since withdrawing from previous agreements. The Americans want Iran to reduce enrichment to no more than 3.67%, the level permitted under the original 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Second, Iran must transfer approximately 450 kilograms of highly enriched uranium currently stockpiled inside Iran to a third country, most likely Russia. This removes the most dangerous material from Iranian soil and extends the time Iran would need to build a nuclear weapon if it chose to break out from the agreement. Third, Iran must allow International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors to return to all nuclear facilities, including those targeted during last June's strikes, to verify that reconstruction is occurring only for peaceful purposes. In exchange, the United States would provide phased sanctions relief, beginning with removal of oil export restrictions that have crippled Iran's economy, followed by broader financial sanctions relief as Iran demonstrates compliance with the agreement. The American proposal also includes a snapback mechanism allowing the United States to immediately reimpose all sanctions if Iran violates any provision of the deal without going through the UN Security Council, where Russia and China could veto action. Iran's counterproposal, according to the same sources, accepts the framework of limiting enrichment, but pushes back on several key points. Tehran wants enrichment suspended rather than permanently eliminated, meaning Iran retains the right to restart enrichment after a defined period, probably 3 to 5 years. Iran wants the highly enriched uranium transferred to Russia, but under conditions that guarantee its return to Iran if the deal collapses. Iran wants a faster sanctions relief timeline with oil export restrictions removed immediately rather than phased over months. And crucially, Iran is insisting that the deal cover nuclear issues only. No missiles, no proxies, no regional behavior, nuclear program only. That demand is non-negotiable from Tehran's perspective. Supreme Leader Khamenei has reportedly told his negotiating team that agreeing to any missile limitations would be surrendering Iran's only remaining deterrent against Israeli and American military action. Iran lost its nuclear facilities in June. If Iran also gives up its missiles, it has no way to threaten retaliation for any future attack. From Khamenei's perspective, that's suicide. So the draft texts exchanged today are a nuclear-only framework, and both sides appear to be moving toward a deal that addresses uranium enrichment while completely ignoring the missile threat that Israel considers existential. Here is what makes today's progress in Geneva so dangerous. The closer the United States and Iran get to a nuclear-only deal, the more desperate Israel becomes to act before that deal is signed. Because once a deal is signed, Israel loses its justification for military action. If America has just concluded a major diplomatic agreement with Iran on nuclear issues, and Israel then bombs Iranian missile facilities, Israel looks like the aggressor that sabotaged American diplomacy. Trump would be furious. European allies would condemn Israel. The United Nations would pass resolutions. Israel would be isolated internationally. That diplomatic cost is enormous. But if Israel strikes before a deal is finalized, while negotiations are still ongoing, Israel can argue that it was acting in self-defense against an imminent missile threat, and that Iran was negotiating in bad faith while secretly maintaining its offensive capabilities. That argument is much easier to defend internationally. So Israel's optimal window for a unilateral strike is right now, between Geneva Round 2 and Geneva Round 3. After Round 2, both sides have shown willingness to negotiate, but no deal is signed yet. Israel can act without destroying a finalized agreement. But if Round 3 produces a signed framework, that window closes. According to multiple Israeli military sources cited by Haaretz and Channel 12 News, Israel's security cabinet has been meeting daily since Netanyahu returned from Washington on February 12th. The meetings are focused on one question: do we strike Iran before a deal is signed, or do we wait and see if the deal includes missile provisions? Netanyahu's position, according to Israeli officials familiar with the deliberations, is that Israel cannot wait indefinitely. Every day that passes without a strike is a day Iran uses to rebuild more missiles, strengthen more bunkers, and improve its defenses against the kind of attack Israel is planning. The military preparations are accelerating in ways that are visible to anyone watching open-source intelligence. Israel's Air Force has been conducting intensive training exercises over the Mediterranean Sea in recent weeks. The exercises involve exactly the kind of long-range strike package that would be needed for an attack on Iran. F-35I Adir stealth fighters, F-15I Ram strike aircraft, Boeing 707 aerial refueling tankers, and electronic warfare aircraft operating together in coordinated formations at night. The training missions are lasting 6 to 8 hours, matching the flight time required for a round trip to targets deep inside Iran. Israeli military censorship authorities have been increasingly active, blocking reports about specific military unit movements and operational preparations. When Israeli censors get busy, Israeli journalists know something significant is being planned. and the United States has been positioning additional military assets in the region in ways that could support either a strike on Iran or defense against Iranian retaliation. Trump confirmed on February 13th that he is sending a second aircraft carrier to the Middle East in case we don't make a deal with Iran. That second carrier strike group, joining the USS Abraham Lincoln, already positioned in the Arabian Sea, gives the United States 2 full carrier battle groups within striking distance of Iran. Each carrier group includes the carrier itself with 90 aircraft, multiple guided missile destroyers, a submarine, and support ships. 2 carrier groups represent an extraordinary concentration of American military power, enough to conduct sustained air operations against Iran for weeks if ordered. Now let me explain exactly why Iran's missile program is the central issue that threatens to blow up everything. Before the June 2025 war, Israel and the United States conducted what they called Operation Midnight Hammer, striking 3 of Iran's major nuclear enrichment facilities. The operation was successful in damaging Iran's nuclear infrastructure. Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan enrichment sites all sustained significant damage. IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi confirmed at the Munich Security Conference last week that inspectors had returned to Iran after the strikes but had not been able to visit any of the targeted sites. That means the international community still doesn't know the full extent of damage or reconstruction. But while everyone was focused on the nuclear sites, Iran made a strategic decision. According to the Critical Threats Project at the American Enterprise Institute, which analyzed satellite imagery and intelligence reports, Iran has been prioritizing reconstruction of its ballistic missile program over its nuclear program. The reasoning is logical from Iran's perspective. Nuclear weapons take years to develop, even with an intact program. Missiles are ready now and provide immediate deterrent capability. Iran has reportedly reconstituted its medium-range ballistic missile stockpile to pre-war levels, according to CTP-ISW analysis published in early February. That means all the missiles that Israel and America destroyed last June have been replaced. Iran is back to having 1,200 to 1,500 operational missiles capable of reaching Israel, and the production lines are still running, meaning that number grows every week. The United States actually intercepted a Chinese shipment of planetary mixers, which are specialized machines needed to produce solid rocket fuel, in the Indian Ocean in November 2025. China was helping Iran rebuild its missile program even while America and Iran were moving toward negotiations. That interception reveals the extent to which Iran is determined to maintain and expand its missile capabilities, regardless of what it agrees to in diplomatic talks. Trump's position on all of this is the most important variable in the entire equation. After the Geneva Round 2 talks concluded today, Trump has not yet made a public statement, but his actions in recent weeks reveal a clear strategic calculation. Trump wants a nuclear deal with Iran that he can present to the American public as a historic diplomatic achievement. Trump sees the Iran nuclear issue as a problem he can solve through personal deal-making in a way that previous presidents failed to do. Obama made a deal, but it was flawed, and Trump himself withdrew from it. Trump believes he can make a better deal. But Trump also wants to maintain pressure on Iran to ensure they negotiate seriously rather than stalling for time. That's why Trump sent a second aircraft carrier to the Middle East. 2 carrier groups are not needed for defense. 2 carrier groups are an offensive strike force. Trump is telling Iran that if Geneva Round 3 doesn't produce an acceptable agreement, American bombs will follow. The problem with Trump's strategy is that it doesn't account for Israel's independent calculations. Trump thinks he can keep Israel patient while diplomacy plays out. He believes Netanyahu will accept a nuclear-only deal if Trump packages it correctly and provides assurances about future negotiations on missiles. But Netanyahu has made clear that he won't accept a deal that leaves Iran's missiles intact. And Netanyahu has the military capability to act independently, regardless of Trump's preferences. Israel has its own F-35s, its own bombs, its own intelligence, and its own political mandate to protect Israeli citizens from the missile threat. So here's where we stand on the evening of February 17, 2026. Geneva Round 2 concluded with good progress and a draft text exchanged, but missiles completely excluded. Iran is at pre-war missile levels, with production continuing. Israel's security cabinet is meeting daily to decide on unilateral strikes. 2 American carrier groups are positioned for potential offensive operations. Netanyahu is under enormous domestic pressure to act decisively. Trump wants a deal but has limited leverage over Israel. And a 3rd round of talks is being scheduled for the near future. The most likely scenario in the next 7 to 14 days is one of 3 outcomes. Outcome 1 is that Geneva Round 3 produces a signed framework agreement covering nuclear issues only. Iran suspends enrichment, transfers uranium, allows inspectors. America lifts oil sanctions. Israel is furious, but Trump pressures Netanyahu to accept the deal and wait for follow-on negotiations on missiles. Israel accepts under protest and stands down from immediate strike plans. War is avoided temporarily, but the underlying tension remains. This outcome requires Trump to successfully manage Netanyahu, which is far from guaranteed. Outcome 2 is that Geneva Round 3 collapses because Iran refuses to budge on key nuclear demands, or because Israel conducts a strike before Round 3 occurs, destroying the diplomatic process. If Israel strikes, Iran retaliates massively. America is dragged into the conflict despite Trump's desire to avoid war. Regional conflict engulfs the Middle East. Oil prices spike. Global economy suffers. This outcome is more likely than most analysts are admitting. Outcome 3 is that Israel strikes Iran specifically to destroy missile facilities before a deal is signed. Iran retaliates against Israeli cities. Both sides suffer casualties. International community demands ceasefire. Trump brokers emergency ceasefire within 48 to 72 hours. Diplomacy resumes under new conditions, with Israel having destroyed Iran's immediate missile threat. This outcome would be painful and costly, but might actually produce a more comprehensive deal that covers both nuclear and missile issues. What you need to watch in the next 48 to 72 hours is very specific. Watch whether Trump makes a public statement about today's Geneva talks. If he says very good progress and we're moving toward a deal, he's signaling to Israel to stand down and let diplomacy work. If he says Iran must also address its missiles or there will be consequences, he's opening the door for harder demands that could collapse the talks but might give Israel cover to wait. Watch whether Israeli military censorship increases further. More censorship means more operational planning. Watch for any unusual Israeli Air Force activity over the Mediterranean that aviation trackers report. Watch what Netanyahu says publicly about today's Geneva talks. His tone will tell you whether Israel is preparing to act or waiting. Watch whether Araghchi or Iranian state media makes any concession statements about missiles after today's talks. Even small rhetorical gestures could signal Iran is willing to discuss missiles in future rounds. And watch the oil markets tonight. If crude prices spike in after-hours trading, traders are pricing in imminent military conflict. Geneva Round 2 just ended. A deal draft was exchanged, progress was made, but missiles are still excluded. Israel is still preparing to strike. 2 American carriers are still in the Arabian Sea. And the window between now and Geneva Round 3 is the most dangerous period in Middle Eastern security in years. The next diplomatic round will either prevent a catastrophic war or be rendered irrelevant by Israeli bombs falling on Iranian missile factories. We will find out very soon which path history chooses. Subscribe and turn on notifications because this story is moving faster than any other in the world right now, and you need to know the moment it breaks.